The year is not special. Nothing dramatic is happening on the streets. No sirens, no shortages, no panic. And yet, in this very ordinary year, your government is spending money that does not exist yet. Money from the future, from people not born, from workers who haven't earned their first paycheck. And somehow, the system keeps running. That's the uncomfortable truth we're starting with. Because if you or I tried this, it would be called reckless. If a household did it, it would be bankruptcy. If a company did it, investors would panic. But when governments do it, we call it policy. And right now, almost every major government on Earth is doing it at a historic scale. So the question isn't, why is this happening? The real question is, why does this still work? And more importantly, how long can it keep working? This matters right now because the numbers have quietly crossed a line. Government debt is no longer a background statistic. It's shaping interest rates. It's shaping inflation. It's shaping wars, elections, housing prices, and your cost of living. And yet, most people don't actually understand what government debt is. They imagine it like a credit card, or a mortgage, or a giant bill that will one day come due. That mental picture is wrong. To understand why governments can borrow from the future without immediately collapsing, we need to forget personal finance for a moment. Because governments don't borrow like people. They borrow like systems. Here's the simple version. A government needs money to function, to build roads, to pay soldiers, to fund hospitals, to stabilize the economy when things go wrong. It gets money in two main ways: taxes and borrowing. Taxes are slow, politically painful, and limited by how much citizens can actually pay. Borrowing is fast, quiet, and can be scaled almost instantly. So when spending exceeds taxes, which it almost always does, governments borrow the difference. They do this by issuing bonds. A bond is not mysterious. It's a promise. You lend the government money today. The government promises to pay you back later with interest. That's it. Pension funds buy these bonds. Banks buy them. Insurance companies buy them. Foreign governments buy them. Sometimes your own retirement account buys them without you noticing. So far, nothing strange. Here's where it gets weird. When the bond comes due, the government usually doesn't pay it off the way you'd expect. It doesn't save up for years and write a big check. Instead, it borrows again. New bonds are issued. Old bonds are paid off. The debt rolls forward in time, over and over, year after year, decade after decade. This is why people say governments borrow from the future, because they're not planning to eliminate the debt. They're planning to manage it. And surprisingly, under the right conditions, that works. Here's the hidden mechanism that makes it possible: economic growth. If the economy grows faster than the debt, the burden shrinks. Imagine a country with a $1 trillion economy and $500 million in debt. If the economy doubles to $2 trillion, while debt rises to $600 million, the country is richer relative to its debt, even though it borrowed more. The debt didn't disappear, it became lighter. This is the core bet governments are making, that future economies will be larger, more productive, and better able to carry the weight we're leaving behind. And historically, for long stretches of time, they were right. Population growth, technological progress, industrial expansion, global trade, all of these pushed economies upward. Debt became a tool, not a trap. But that's half the story. The second mechanism is more uncomfortable: inflation. Inflation quietly reduces the real value of debt. If a government borrows $100 and inflation cuts the purchasing power of money in half over time, the government effectively repays less in real terms. The number stays the same, the value does not. This is why moderate inflation is often tolerated. It erodes debt slowly without announcing itself. Creditors get repaid, but with money that buys less. It's not default, it's dilution. Now here's the irony. The people hurt most by this are often the very people funding the system. Savers, pension funds, bondholders, ordinary workers storing value in cash. Debt survives by quietly taxing the future. So if economic growth and inflation are the engines that make this system work, what happens when they slow down? This is where the math turns uncomfortable. Many developed economies are aging. Fewer workers, more retirees, slower growth. At the same time, interest rates are no longer near zero, which means borrowing costs more. When interest rates rise, governments don't just owe money, they owe money more faster. And unlike households, governments can't easily cut their biggest expenses: healthcare, defense, social programs, debt interest itself. So they borrow more to cover the interest. This is where people start using words like debt spiral. But here's the nuance most explanations miss. A government that issues debt in its own currency operates under different rules. It can always create more money. That doesn't mean it should, it means it can. This is why some governments can carry enormous debt without collapsing, while others can't survive much less. The danger isn't running out of money. The danger is losing trust. Because bonds only work if people believe the promise, believe they'll be repaid, believe inflation won't explode, believe the system remains stable. Once that belief cracks, borrowing stops being cheap. And when borrowing gets expensive, everything tightens at once. We've seen this movie before. Not always with dramatic explosions. Sometimes it looks quiet. Currencies weakening, prices creeping upward each year. The uncomfortable truth is that government borrowing doesn't fail suddenly. It fails socially, through slower growth, through reduced purchasing power, through a future that feels smaller than expected. So why does the system still work? Because it's not built for honesty, it's built for continuity. Debt spreads cost across time, across generations, across people that don't vote yet. It avoids immediate pain, and political systems are very good at avoiding immediate pain. But this doesn't mean collapse is inevitable. It means trade-offs are unavoidable. More debt today means fewer choices tomorrow. More stability now often means less flexibility later. And here's the part rarely said out loud. There is no final bill. There is no moment when the world gathers and pays everything off. There's only rolling management, adjustments, reforms, inflation, growth if we're lucky. Governments borrow from the future not because they're careless, but because modern economies are built on momentum. Stopping suddenly would hurt more than continuing, at least in the short term. So the real question isn't whether the system works. It clearly does. The real question is whether the future it relies on will be rich enough, productive enough, and stable enough to carry what we're leaving behind. Because debt doesn't ask permission, it just waits. And one day, quietly, it asks the future to explain why it believed us.
Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to get more videos. Bye for today.